I think there's some other opportunities here. And I will say that for those of you that have been around a while, I think Doug and some of the guys, not picking on Doug, but I did almost this exact same presentation in 2006 at Fin and Feather. And there wasn't a lot of interest in it. And so, not interest from you guys, I think interest from the public, because we talk about GPS guidance, and and at that time I'm getting all this, well, I can get a GPS at Walmart for $100. Why would I spend $2,500 on something for my tractor? Or I've got GPS on my phone, why can't I use that? Well, certainly in that time frame, a couple things. Our GPS guidance systems have gotten a lot better, I think, over that time, and a little bit cheaper. And I think that the rapid adoption in crop production systems makes the pasture guys more readily, looking at it, I think. And so anyways, I'm going to talk about a few things related to pasture management and technology. And so what are the ones that I see specifically where there's opportunities? And I'm going to tell you, we'll be way ahead of the game right now, I think, as far as adoption and learning about some of this stuff. But certainly GPS guidance is there, and there's the two levels of guidance is what we call assisted steering, which means I still have my hands on the wheel. And then we got auto steering, where I push the button and get to let go. And so those two things. Mapping is a big one, I think, for pasture spraying and fertilizing for a couple different reasons. And a couple others that are in there. Boom section control. We've got, when you go west and you see sprayers, or even in our crop production areas, down in the Weber's area and up in the Northeast, if I've got a 90 to 120 foot sprayer and I'm spraying, my field with it, then basically what it's doing is it maps at the same time. And if part of my boom is going over an area that's already been sprayed, it just shuts off automatically. And you can do that manually. And I know a lot of guys that spend time on row grader spraying. They're shutting off boom sections individually as they hit areas and turning them back on. But then you forget, and you've left one on too long, or you didn't turn it off, or turn it back on is even worse. So those things happen. So we've automated those. And then boom height control is another. I'm not going to spend time on that today, but certainly is an opportunity, especially in a pasture situation where your terrain is really uneven. But right now, when we start looking at cost, everything I got up here costs a lot of money, relatively, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But it's a matter of, okay, where do you see this adopting in pasture systems? Sensors and UAS, unmanned aerial systems. I got a lot of colleagues in Stillwater and around the country who would be really laughing at me a lot if they saw me talking about this, because I'm kind of not real high on the UAV phase, I look at it, I'm like, so what? It's just a little plane, we're flying. If you like flying planes, then go ahead. It's kind of like Randy said, if it makes you feel better, then go ahead and do that if it doesn't cost a lot of money. But so GPS signals, here's the thing we want to look at is basically a WASP signal is your real entry level. It's free. It's a differential correction. So you got to have some kind of correction on the GPS signal to take some errors out of it. Otherwise, there is a lot of error in that signal. And basically, the error is just that if I stand at one point with the GPS, it's going to consistently tell me that I'm somewhere else. From a standpoint, because it's all it's doing is doing the math on calculating where you are based on the satellites. But basically, a WASP system is a hula hoop. Okay, that's about where it is. A dual frequency system. Now, if I look at dual frequency, I'm going to pay a subscription to get a better signal and a better differential. I get the same GPS signal, but I just get a better differential correction, and that's going to cost me money, anywhere from $900 to $1,500 a year probably for that subscription, and that's going to get me to a dinner plate. And if I want to really go up, the RTK is basically a silver dollar level accuracy. But with that, cost goes up with everything. GPS accuracy is like horsepower. You want more, you pay more. And so if I want to get to that silver dollar, then we're probably talking 25 to 30 grand, setup to get started with that. But there's no more annual fees unless you're on a network and you're buying a subscription, your RTK subscription from the network. The difference between these two really is, even this one, there's two WASP stations in the U.S. one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast. And so basically, that's where the correction's getting calculated, is at those two stations, and then they're broadcasting it back via satellite to Oklahoma, Nebraska, Kansas, wherever. So this one is happening a little closer, but with your RTK, that differential correction is coming probably within 8 miles of where you are. So they're very individualized correction, and that's how they get it to be more accurate. And plus the fact that with the RTK system, the stationary, the base station, and the vehicle, tractor, sprayer, whatever, they have to have at least 5 satellites in common. So out of the 24 satellites we have, they have to be looking at least 5 the same, or else you don't get a correction. And the WASP, it doesn't matter because it's kind of a real generalized thing. But if I'm planting corn, I probably want this, and I probably don't want to steer. But if I'm spraying pastures, I'm probably over here easily. And so there's the big difference. So that's where we're seeing the entry level. The reason we says this is out Matt Dart, Iowa State, shared this photo, and then he shared the fact that it's not really true. They kind of made it up to make it work, but it's kind of like Randy's vest. It's okay to make up data for an educational purpose, you know. But it's pretty realistic, and I'll show you some data that's not made up. The RTK, basically they put a paint can on the drawbar and drove this AB line, you know, every 2 hours for 6 or 7 times, or 6 times, 4 times. The red line is the spray paint from the RTK. It painted it in the same place every time. Okay. Yellow that you can kind of barely see on here, that's the Starfire 2. That will be that dual frequency correction, and the blue is basically a WASP. And so what it's saying is that if my tractor's driving this same AB line, now the AB line is some fictitious line that we put on the face of the earth, and it says that's where the GPS says I am. It's like holding it still and watching the numbers change while you're not moving. And so they're coming back and say, well, I don't know, 2.5 feet maybe, you know. So it's going to come back to that spot relatively close. Now here is some actual data that some students took last spring as part of a class project, and they wanted something to do. So we're looking at that GPS signal drift, because what happens with the GPS signal is it just drifts over time. It's not like it's randomly occurring. There's a pattern to it, and over time it will drift, and then it will drift back, and it will drift again. It's very cyclical. And so we had our John Deere tractor 6420 with the RTK on it, and this is just saying that what we did is we put a 4-row planter on the tractor and just stuck it in the ground so they could see the trenches where the planter marked, and made 4 passes. And so then they came back and said on the same AB line with the tractor and ran the RTK, Starfire 2, and then we were running SF1, which is the same as WASP basically as far as an accuracy. And as they came back 3 hours later, they measured where is my mark relative to the mark I made 3 hours ago with my planter. In other words, what was that little bit of error in there? And you can see we're up at about 9 inches off with WASP, about 4 inches of drift with the Starfire 2, and almost drafting the planter. And actually probably what would happen to a certain degree, if you get close enough to that planter mark, there's probably enough movement in it that the planter just falls into the mark that was there before. You know, so that's how close it was to it. But if we look at that pass to pass, you know, and this is, you know, the difference between the guess row and the planter. So as they made those passes and they measure between, you know, the outside row on this pass going this way and then the one coming back, they make that measurement. It should be 30 inches. Well, that's the error between it in a couple different locations that they measured it. Now, this is a very short turnaround because we're we're running, I don't know, 150 feet maybe. It's not like it's going a quarter mile and coming back. Usually, most of our pass-to-pass ratings that we would give for GPS systems there are no standards, but it's roughly based on about a 15-minute interval, which is about 5 to 6 miles an hour, making a half-mile run, going down, coming back. Is about what that boils down to. If you look at the SF1, you know, I've got a pass-to-pass error of 3 to 4.5 inches. Usually we would say somewhere in 6 to 10 is probably what that system's going to be. So again, for a pasture application where I'm going from trying to see my tracks over here and steering straight, or trying to pick out a tree down here and steering straight, I'm going from that to the GPS is putting me within 6 to 8 inches. And so, again, with RTK, we're much better. Our pass-to-pass is under an inch, but pretty level ground. So that's what we had. That's not supposed to be in here still. So we start talking about these, and this is where the applications are. If we're looking at boomless sprayers, you know, that's almost everything that we do in pastures is very hard to see. If it's a litter application, or we're spinning spreader, fertilizer out with a spinner. The other thing we have, at least with our sprayer, you know, we know what our pass is, and it's going to basically put approximately the same rate all the way across the width of that boomless sprayer. But these two systems here, when you're looking at the spinner, they require the correct amount of overlap for your rate changes, because it's not the application rate is not the same over the full width. So there has to be a certain amount of overlap to get your rate right. And so being able to see that and as you're driving is going to be really challenging. And so I think there's a real opportunity to become more efficient. This is when I spent a long time in Kansas, and I was doing this meeting one time, and I was going to talk about tractor efficiency and stuff. And I'm on right after lunch, and I'm sitting at this table, and this farmer looks over and he goes, "Man," he goes, "I'm going to tell you what. If one more guy from the university tells me I need to be more efficient," he goes, "I'm going to hit him right in the mouth." And I'm thinking, I got to get some new slides. There's going to be fisticuffs here later. But anyway, I think there's this opportunity to be more efficient in what we do. Because here's the thing: if I'm doing my spraying myself and I'm looking at this package, one of two things is, if I'm putting out the correct rate of whatever herbicide I'm spraying or fertilizer, because I've said I got a 40-acre pasture and I'm putting 100 pounds of nitrogen on, you know, so now I need 4,000 pounds of nitrogen, then I'm putting 4,000 pounds of nitrogen out there. But is it on uniformly? And am I getting the benefit out of it? And basically, if I look at the stuff that Brian showed on TEF, if in fact I'm not uniform with it, I could be hurting myself pretty bad in some areas, and then hurting myself in the over-applied areas too. And so anyways, assisted steering, it used to be when we first started, way back in the day, that's what we had right there. We just had those lights. And really, I think when we did the thing in 2006 at Fin and Feather, we had this as an option. We had those lights as an option. And then we had stuff like this as an option at a much higher price. Because there weren't any of these right here. We've got a couple of these out here later. But basically, you're looking at some row of lights to help you determine where you need to be. And I keep talking about an A-B line. That's my preference. You know, in a lot of crop production scenarios, everything we want to do, we want to do in a straight line if possible. And because life's easier. In a pasture situation, I would do the same. If I'm going to use guidance system, I'm going to set an A-B line, which is I set my A point right here. I go to the other end where I'm going to be, and I set a B point. And now what I get is I get a straight line between them. I can drive it like this. But all it knows, all my GPS knows, is I got an A point and a B point, and it's a straight line. And so then what it will do is it will create these parallel lines at whatever width I tell it that I'm spraying, fertilizing, whatever, so I can get my correct overlap. It draws these lines from here, as far as I know, all the way around the world. I know if I set an A-B line out in the Panhandle and I get back to Stillwater, it'll come up and it'll tell me I'm going to pass 999, because it doesn't go past, it doesn't go to 4 digits, it doesn't figure you need them. But so the lines are there. Again, you're going to set that as an A-B line, and then you're going to use that as your guidance. Preferably, I kind of like this because I respond better to lights. If you look at a lot of your 4-Hers or your younger kids, they're probably going to respond to something better than this, you know, because they're trained like that, you know. They're trained to interpret those visual things a heck of a lot faster than I am. I always say all the time that if you give a system like this to my son who just turned 21, you could have given it to him 10 years ago and just let him look at that, he could drive that sucker straight as, you know, he'd be dead on because he's vocationally he's trained like that off of video games and stuff. Now, he might be banging the boom on fence posts. You know? But I promise you, if the line's straight, he's going to hit that boom on the fence post in the same place every time. You know, because he would be that good. But anyways, so these are, farmers are really gravitating towards this because it is visual, but the row of lights is really good. And what I like is you can see them without looking at them. In other words, if you have to sit and stare, because that's the deal. If you take a kid that's running this, he's not going to be looking out the window. He's playing this game, you know. And if you look at, I don't have a picture of it, but the auto steer on our tractor, you can't get past the startup screen on the auto steer until you push the button and says, yes, I accept the fact that it has auto steering, blah, blah, blah. John Deere's attorneys are now removed from all future accidents and kids I may run over. But it's because you still have to look out the window. And that's the thing. And that's what I like about the lights, because if you see this, and you'll see them out here later, is it's green within this little tolerance that you set for it. I want to be within a foot, or I want to be within whatever it is. The lights are green. As soon as you see a red light out of the corner of your eye, you know you're getting off path. And you can respond to it. So I don't have to watch this. The only reason I'm watching this is because I'm going to see mapping. Again, that's my preference. And I'll say this: we've done this, and we did it in Tahlequah, did it with Nathan in Stillwater, and where else would we go, Josh?
Langley and
yeah, we've done a bunch of these, and really with this Outback, because these are all really entry level systems. This is about $800-900 for this one. We're about $1,200 to $1,500 for those two going up. This is basically an Outback step-up version of this, but this is their entry-level system. There's not been a lot of interest in this because it doesn't have the mapping capabilities with the screen. And so, but anyways, you can have a chance to look at those. I'm glad Wendy and Kyle are here because they're my trainer. I've already trained them, so they've trained everybody else now on the Gators. But auto steer. You know, I look at this, and from a passenger standpoint, yeah, I get the fact that guys aren't going to do it. But it's like, why have auto steer? I'm like, why have cruise control? It's just an automatic system is all it is. Why have a cab on your tractor? Because life's nicer. You ever get a chance to run auto steer? You be going, God dang, I got to get me some of this. You know, I got to figure out how to buy. I got to figure out buy this because it's that nice. You know, it's like you can get in your car and drive to Shreveport without cruise control, right? Do you want to? If I'm planting 500 acres or so more, I'm thinking, oh, after I've used it a little bit, it's pretty nice. Now, again, it comes with price. Again, auto steer make an inexperienced driver more experienced as a driver. That still doesn't make him an operator. And you know, if you guys got kids or you're going to have kids, they're all going to be really different. My daughter just turned 19, and my daughter's an operator. Okay, my son's not. That's just not. It's not in his DNA. He's more like his mom. You know, my daughter's probably more like me. You know, she's like my son. If he's not the operator type. If the belt on the mower starts squealing, he's going to drive it till it stops, and he's probably going to park it where it is. And I'm going to come home. Well, why's the yard not mowed? I don't know. Mower quit. You know, my daughter, she hears it squealing. She's like, hey, Dad, is the mower supposed to make that sound? I'm like, oh, no, it's not. Bless you. Save me a couple $100. And my yard's going to get mowed. But anyways, that's just, so putting auto steer on here doesn't mean you can put anybody on the vehicle you want. You know, you still got to have somebody that knows how the implement works. Otherwise, you better like to weld. But you know, it takes enough stuff. So, if we think about applying this into pastures, now if we start looking at pastures, then we've got lots of obstacles, we've got terrain differences. There's a reason it's a pasture in most cases, okay? And so there's a lot of areas in that pasture, though, where we could probably spray it with a boom sprayer, but we don't because we go to the lowest common denominator, which means I have to have boomless to spray some areas, and so I just spray the whole pasture with it. And so one of the things that we've been working with Dave Lawman over in Animal Sciences, we've kind of put together a sprayer for him because when he was looking at sprayers, back earlier in the year, I asked him, I said, because he's talking about boomless spray, I said, how much of your pasture could you spray with a boom? He said, probably 70-80%. I said, then why aren't you? Well, it's kind of this combination thing. And so it is a heck of a lot harder to use booms in a pasture, there's no question. But I'll promise you this, if you think you're getting better coverage and better control with a boomless sprayer than you'll get with a boom, just keep thinking that, because it's not happening. I mean, you're kind of, I know what Brian said about his, we planted it with a drill, or I can't remember, broadcast it with a drill. It's like, not how he's kind of spread out. And a guy told me a long time ago, if you're talking about planting corn, you're planting something, with a row crop planter, a vacuum system on it generally. If you got a drill, he said a grain drill is basically a controlled spill. That's about what it is. Because a grain drill works like this. I just I'll grab it a little bit every time and just dump it down the thing. You keep going along, and that's basically what we're dealing with a boomless sprayer. It's kind of along those same lines. It's basically kind of just a controlled spill. I'm spraying it out there somewhere, hoping it hits something I want it to kill. Where we get a lot better coverage with a boom. Now, a lot of stuff we spray, that's just not going to work. But in the areas that we can, if we can pick up that better efficacy with our spray equipment and our herbicides, there's some real value there as far as control, and hopefully that in the future, if the conditions, if the weather cooperates, that turns into better profit, maybe better stocking rates or whatever that is. Nice things about pasture spraying is if we're starting to map, we kind of can see some overlap areas or maybe even some skips. If I set my AB line and I've got a tree, I can drive around my tree and get right back on my AB line. That's the reason I like to do the straight lines if possible. There's some stuff where you look at, okay, they're trying to do, this curve following. Because you can do curve following with the GPS. You set it up that, okay, I'm going to drive past, and it's going to give me a parallel pass to that. But the problem is it recalculates that next one every time. So if you screw up on one, that screw up is going to be in the next one too, and it's going to tell you to follow it because that's where you're supposed to be. If I just go this route, it doesn't matter what's here. I can drive around. Or if I've got this ravine that cuts through here, and all of a sudden I'm going to start doing this, and then go to the other side and pick it up, and hit. So there's a lot of different options in doing it that way. But I think the mapping part of it, when we start thinking about that mapping, it's going to take us to a level where we can split that sprayer and try to get the best of both worlds. Because now it doesn't have to be, have I forgot where I sprayed and where I haven't? I've mapped it all. And ultimately what we can do with this, so we can sit and I can spray this little area in here with my boomless and then spray this back here, going straight back and forth with the boom potentially. And so if you get it set up right, I would say this, that I think we made this a mistake with this one, I'll come back to it, is one thing that I'm going to do different with Dave's, I'm going to keep doing stuff on Dave's sprayer until he tells me he doesn't have any more money. But we've got our boomless nozzles basically here in the center of it, spraying around. I want to move them to the edge because first thing is my sprayer's already there anyways, and now it just picked me up another 7-8 feet because I can run this boom at the same time I'm running my boomless to spray my tracks where my tractor is, and it'll be fine. I'm not going to bang it into a lot. Now there are challenges with nozzles, and so dragging into other brush or whatever. But anyways, if I move that out, basically I picked up width, and when I pick up more width, then I get to cover ground faster. But that's section controls. We've got this. It certainly is in crop production areas. Probably one of the most rapidly adopted practices in crop production right now is why section control, because of the benefits for it. I'd probably save 10% on corn seed using it planting. And so basically what they're doing here is they plant this pass first around the outside edge of the field, then when I hit my straight ones, it shuts off the rows as I'm planting. And so that's not been cultivated or hoed out. That planter shuts off at that spot. And so as you're mapping it, You know, there's that chance to do this. And sprayers, we're not. If I'm spraying a pasture, I'm probably 3 sections. Most of your sprayers, your big ones, if you're 120 or 100 foot wide sprayers, you're probably talking 5 to 7 sections, no more than 7 that they're going to turn on and off, you know, automatically. So I think it would take the mapping part of it, and then we come back into this pasture spraying. Now, I don't even really have to worry as much about where I've sprayed as I'm mapping this stuff. I can hit those areas, and if I'm coming around these irregular shaped fields, which is going to be a pasture or obstacles and stuff, then it's automatically going to shut off if I'm over an area that's already been sprayed, and I'm saving product. And I guess the whole point is to try to make some of this weed control and stuff in pastures a little bit more economical, so that it seems more attractive for folks to use. And sensors, and this is pretty far down there. And here's the deal, because right now with UAVs, it's illegal to fly them if you make money. It's illegal to fly them if they're profitable to you, as far as the FAA is concerned. So if I'm gathering information for a hobbyist, I can do that. But so one of the things that we did, and as Dave and I were talking, I walked through this field with a green seeker, and I was like, Brian was telling me, you gather this green. You guys have seen the green seekers. A lot of you have them in your office, and I always said, if everything looks like a nail, if all you got's a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so we use green seekers all the time because we got them. But it's a very good measurement of biomass. And this, so I looked at some Cerisa lespedeza. Here's the NDVI down here, anywhere from 0.5 up to 0.75. I just walked in this pasture out at the North Farm with a little handheld green seeker, and I'm looking, I'm going, man, there's a lot of Cerisa right there, and I kind of get me a reading. I'm going, that's 80%. You know? So you got your engineer now doing your weed ratings for you. But I get a nice curve. I didn't make this data up. It just happened to be that it was like that. But if you're getting into these areas where you got a little better, because when I'm looking at these down here, now this is a late season, and so I guess I think about it is, are there opportunities there for us to think about this pasture management and how we're going to do it, how we're going to be better into the future, and maybe be ahead of the curve as the technology gets ready for us. Maybe I just found a job, because my biggest deal with UAVs is, what's its job? What data is it going to give me that's going to help me be a better manager? And right now, I've been in precision ag long enough. 96, I really started working in the precision ag area. And the whole remote sensing thing, we had airplanes. Then we had this set of satellites. Then we had better airplanes. And then we had satellites with better resolution. Now we got UAVs. It's all the same thing. If I'm just taking pictures, it's all the same thing. And so if I can give this little boy a job, now I potentially got something out of it. And maybe if it's mapping my pasture, and I'm going to say, you know what? There's not enough right here for me to worry about. So I've got this prescription map. I'm going to look at it and go, I'm just going to drive in these areas. I'll drive back and forth over here, then I'm going to come over here where it's high again, and I'm only going to spray those areas automatically. Or maybe I'm going to change my rate if I'm going to spray them. But then we've got to get a heck of a lot more people involved than me, if that's what we're going to do. And so, remember, what we're going through in agriculture is an evolution. You got your spinner spreader. He needs a GPS to mount right up there on the back of them horses. Get it swapped with, right? I did this program for Will last week. We were up at Pawhuska. If you want to work on something like this, let me know. If it fits in, maybe if your Cattlemen's Association meetings, or as I know that Josh, we've kind of tied it into some poultry deals and expanded those a little bit instead of just we talked a little bit more about the GPS and pasture management in those meetings as well. So I'm available and willing. We do have 2 gators out here that Josh has made sure that we've had. I've got an Outback GPS on them. Basically the 2 that I have are, I think, these 2 right here. I've got one of these on one of them, and I've got this one on another one that we can use. Animal Sciences got my cruiser, or my cruiser, so I didn't get that back in time to bring it over here. And unfortunately, because I think when we've done these meetings with producers, that's probably been one of the most the most liked ones was the Raven. And some of that, I think, stems from the fact that there's a couple pretty good Raven dealers in eastern Oklahoma. And it's part, and then as soon as one farmer buys one, because that's what I told the guys at the pond, this guy's like, going, buy the one your neighbor's buying if he likes it, because then you can call him and he's probably going to answer because he doesn't know he's doing customer support, you know. And you can ask him, so you kind of learn. If you learn something, you can share it with him. If he learns something, you can share it with you. And so I think that's the reason we probably see a lot of these, I think, over in this part of the States, because there's been a few guys that bought them and started using them. So, yeah, Nathan.
Randy, I think the biggest holdup on this, and I think there's a lot of counties that are under the same deal. We're dealing with that generation that is non-technical.
Mm-hmm.
And they see this as a real big step for them to go to GPS. Has there ever been any economics that we could show them to say, if you buy this $2,500 system, how many acres do you need to do to recoup that cost? Because it's all about the dollar for them guys.
Bryce got some stuff on Post Train usually they do.
Nathan, I'm not aware of any, and Scott could probably tell you how difficult an economic study like that would be, because it all depends on what are you spraying, what are you putting on your field, how wide is it?
Generic numbers,
yeah.
Like majority of producers have 10% skip, 10% overlap, and the average pasture spray cost is $12 an acre. If you spray 100 acres, you'll pay for this unit in 2 years of spraying. I think that would be a big selling point for the generation of producers that we're dealing with.
I'm always surprised. That's a good point, Nathan. I'm always surprised at the age of the guys that will stay and talk after the meeting that are getting ready to buy one of these. Because it is surprising, because they're ready to, but they are a little scared of pushing the buttons. Me, I'll keep pushing buttons on it until the smoke comes out of it, But because that doesn't bother me that it burns up, but it's not mine. But the economics, we could do something like that. We generally assume in crop production, in field crop production, that average overlap is 10%. Okay. I'm going to contend that there's two kinds of overlap that we're dealing with. Average overlap from steering, if it's 10% on average, I fire the driver. Okay? Because let's think about that. That means if I'm pulling a 30-foot disc and my average overlap, that's 3 foot of overlap. That means for every time I'm dead on, there's another time I'm overlapping 6 feet. Even I can do better than that on bourbon, So so I don't think 10% is a good number. Now, I do believe 10% overlap, and the reason I believe 10% overlap is because of headlands. Here's where our overlap occurs, and section control takes care of that. So in a pasture situation, where you'll see it, and where I see the guys that are most interested now are skips. They see because that's very visual. I grew up Johnny Cupsick. I mowed hay for this guy in Tahlequah when I was in just out of high school, my senior year, and with a sickle bar mower. And I left a few skips in this field. My first job, I thought I did all right. Johnny made me go out there and cut them skips down with a pocket knife. Okay? You think I ever skipped again? I leave each thinking, I may overlap too much, but you see those skips. And so that's where guys get them. And so if this can really help them avoid skips, but what's the cost of that? Man, that's a hard one to put a handle on. And my contention is always that where it's going to save me is really in more efficient use of what I'm putting out. Because again, we're going to match it. If I'm putting out 100 pounds of nitrogen on 40 acres, I get 4,000 pounds of nitrogen, and that gets put out there. If I'm spraying, you know, a quarter 2,4-D or whatever it is, that's what I put out there. That's what goes on the field. It may not go on the whole field uniformly, but that's what's going to go on that within those fences. But that's a long ways to say, no, there's not any data. But the question is, okay, what do you need, and what's the driving factor? The cost is always going to be there, but personally for me, I think the driving factor is these guys are looking at skips now and getting tired of them, going, you know what, I think I can do better than I am.
Randy, out in Enid a few years ago, you had some dealers out there demonstrating these, and they're turning them nozzles on and off. I was thinking one of them dealers said they had a customer that had something like 5,000 or 6,000 acres, and he cut his chemical cost in half after he bought this system, spraying pastures.
In half, as the salesman said, in half. But I honestly, I think if in fact I'm mixing it and I'm spraying it, I'm going from one pasture to another, so I'm not. It's not like it's okay. I got 4,000 pounds of nitrogen for this field. I believe 10% is 10% in crop production is overlap, and I think that's due to primarily to headlands. That's because if you're in a crop production field, seeing where you bend's a hell of a lot easier than in a pasture. Mm-hmm. And so, even without that, because you're probably running some kind of markers or something, or if I'm 30 foot wide, I can go over here, I can see my overlap from my drill or my disc. I can just look back and see it. So, or I can't do that if I'm in a pasture. I would think that 25% would be very doable in a pasture situation. But I don't know about from the section control. Most guys with booms, you know, and those section control systems, they're not spraying a lot of pastures. Matter of fact, a lot of custom guys won't even spray some pastures because it's how hard it is on equipment. Matter of fact, one of Will's farmers told me he wanted to get a spray coop and start spraying his pastures. And my question was, how good a welder are you? Because you're going to be doing a lot of it. But I think there's some opportunities there. But boy, what it is, it's tough to quantify. Because I'll tell you, and I even wanted to do a little study with some of these and say, can we improve the operator and, you know, with these as far and just mapping where they've been in the fields. And I'm still amenable to doing that. If we wanted to do it, I can put an RTK system on his tractor and map where he is. So I get a very precise mapping location and let him just drive on his own and then drive with one of these. But the problem is the learning curve on these initially is negative. In other words, you're going to start doing worse for a little bit until you get used to it. And that's the reason all the GPS guys, Raven, Trimble, those guys, they don't want you to do a study right away, because if I just walk out there and go, okay, I'm going to map where you're going in your spraying, then I'm going to give you this. And if you go out here and try them, you'll see that all of a sudden you're so focused on this little GPS that you're not doing that good job of driving until you learn it a little bit. Then after you've learned it and it starts happening back here instead of here, then that's where the benefit comes in. But we could try to quantify that, and I'd be really happy to try to do something like that if you guys had some guys you wanted to work with. But the first thing is we're going to have to train them. We have to let them get used to using it before we try to quantify them, and then take it away from them and see how they like that. Take a pacifier away from a baby. But
Brian? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I kind of got thinking about the same thing when we were putting those presentations together for the poultry meetings. And, you know, honestly, like even a 20% overlap in a pasture scenario, let's just say 30-foot boom swath on a cluster nozzle, 6 foot of overlap is not much. I can't be that accurate. I mean, I've been 20 foot off before. Oh my God, I'm about to run over my own tracks, you know, and go back over here. So I think a lot of producers probably have way more overlap than they think.
yeah.
And my dad's a great example. You know, we've got an S-Lite on the tractor, and we've got this 120-acre hay meadow that used to take about a tank and a third, 300-gallon tank. Doesn't take a full tank now. So that's about a 35% improvement just in the amount of chemical we're putting out. So yeah, I think 20 to 30% somewhere is not too far-fetched in pasture.
Yeah. And
I want a little overlap, but I don't want a lot of overlap.
Well, that's why you spray when the wind's blowing a little bit.
That's right.
But Nathan's right.
Yeah.
If you can quantify telling them that they can pay it off within a year or something like that of spraying, and justify them buying it, it's a whole lot easier for us to get them to buy in than it is to just say, hey, let's get technology out.
I think, and that's my, and I get that, and we could work through some scenarios and generate some real generic numbers to look at, but then that's really all they are, is some real generic numbers, and pull out some typical pasture herbicides and talk about that, but it's all hypothetical, and really to me, the driving factor is I can throw it up there and I can tell the guy, hey, you're going to save $10 an acre. You can increase your stocking rates. Now you're going to get to buy a new aluminum stock trailer and a vacation house in Colorado if you get one of these. So, and he's still not going to buy one until he, in his mind, convinces himself, until he gets tired of looking at skips. That's what's going to drive it. When he gets tired of looking at skips, he's going to be going, all right, I'm in.
It removes a lot of anxiety too. I mean, while you're spraying, because you're either going to have overlap or you're going to have skips.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been doing it for a long time, so you know how to do it.
Yeah.
But you're always never going to know.
Yeah.
Well, I just think some,
Yeah.
not that it has to be exact, but
Yeah.
some suggested numbers that say,
Okay.
if you're having 10, 20% overlap or skips,
Yeah.
it is worth this many dollars per acre.
Okay.
And if you're spraying 100 acres, in 2 years' time, you can buy this unit and you can almost eliminate that. Besides,
Give them something to think about.
Yes.
We can do that. I
it's
think.
only going to work on those guys that are borderline
Yeah.
thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
But
All right. Well, I've been working on a little fact sheet to pull up some of this GPS stuff, the accuracy levels, and where they apply. So we'll get that turned out to you guys, and we'll work on a little portion of that. Can be a little table on potential return with some different scenarios, whether it might be litter, pasture herbicides, or maybe some fertilizer on some improved pastures, and go through some scenarios. And it would be nice if you guys got some folks this spring. Again, it would be nice for us to attempt to quantify what that overlap is. Because if I can quantify that, then it's not me and Brian going, hey, 20% is not out of question. But if we can put that and say, you know what, we were in 5 producers' fields in eastern Oklahoma, and we measured their overlap at this. I've measured it in crop fields, and 10% is not bad. And really, I mean, that's going to be pretty good in crop production fields. But again, it's not coming from steering errors primarily. But in pasture situation, probably more than half of it of your overlap is from steering errors. But not the headlands. But there's a heck of a lot of, there's more headland type stuff in pastures. And so that fits in as well. But we could actually separate that. I could separate what's a driving error, a steering error, and what's a headland error from a pasture situation. Then you can talk about 2 different technologies, because we got to fix for both of them. That's a good question.
You want to take them outside or
Yeah, I just want to mention we put on 3 of these field days, and we've had producers that I think responded very positively to all of them. We've done them in the Tahlequah, Valiant, and Stillwater. And basically all we need is an area like what we have out here. We need someone to sponsor some gators or some equipment that we can set them up on. And we've had producers hang around for usually an hour afterwards just asking questions. I know that there's been guys that have gone and bought these, because I've heard it even from the dealers. They've said, hey, the reason I came to this field day was to try out these different ones and then make a decision on which one I wanted to buy. So if your equipment dealer sells these, there's a bonus for them to help sponsor some equipment that we can demonstrate the different technologies. But what I would say is, we've advertised this as a general ag producer field day. We've calibrated sprayers, we've calibrated manure spreader trucks, and then we've demonstrated this. So it's a different twist on holding a producer event. I've liked every one of them. I think the producers have as well. And as a side note, we can offer poultry waste management continuing education credit. So instead of taking them in a classroom setting like this, we can get them out in the field and do hands-on stuff. So that's a great example. If you guys are interested in doing something like that, you don't have to it doesn't have to be a poultry waste producer event, but hey, if we got the curriculum there that ties in with them, I don't mind offering credit for it. And then a plug for our sponsor, Grissom's has helped us on this 2 times now. We've got some really nice brand new 4-seater Gators out there. And I talked to Grissom's beforehand, and he said that they're now a dealer for Raven, which has been the most popular one when we compare all these on the table. And he said they also service Raven as well now, so they're not just selling it. So I thought it's worth, since they're helping us sponsor these things, putting a little plug in for Grissom's.
Now, one of the things, if we talk about mapping, if we're going to use these, basically with these systems here, I can map, and I can, basically the mapping is, I got to push the button to start, push the button to stop. But these are very easy with either one of these systems. I can tie it into my boom control switch on my sprayer. So now when I turn my sprayer on, it starts mapping. When I turn it off, it stops. So again, I automate that mapping portion of it so I can see where I've been and some stuff, as opposed to doing it manually. So those are some options there as well. But I don't know, it's a nice day.
Is that a side?
Let's go outside and look at them.